one of the most underrated books or stories told or spoken about in the Bible is found in 2 Samuel chapter 9. And it talks about David's kindness to Mephibosheth. And what's so crazy is that David was king, right? And Saul was already dead. And King Saul was going after David his whole life. He was running after him because of jealousy, because he saw what David had. And he knew that he was a king. But at this point, Saul had died. And David is asking, is there anyone remaining from the family of Saul I can show kindness to for Jonathan's sake? Now, Jonathan was King Saul's son and was also David's best friend. And Jonathan made a covenant with David. Even though his father was chasing him, trying to kill him, Jonathan knew that David was going to be king, knowing that he was the heir of the kingdom. Jonathan was supposed to be seated in the kingdom, but he saw what God was doing in David's life and acknowledged that he was the next king. And so David is asking, is there anyone that I can show kindness to? And that challenges me as a Christian. Is that a first thought of mine? Is there anyone I can show kindness to? I think that's the attitude that we should possess as Christians, and not always think about me, but let's see how we can serve other people. And then it continues to say, there was a servant of Saul's family named Ziba. They summoned him to David, and the king said to him, "Are you Ziba?" "I am your servant," he replied. So the king asked, "Is there anyone left of Saul's family that I can show the kindness of God to?" Ziba said to the king, "There is still Jonathan's son who was injured in both feet." The king asked him, "Where is he?" Okay, let's pause right there, because Mephibosheth was lame. He didn't even have functional feet. So he was in a place called Lobadar, I believe it was. And that means a place of no bread. Bread usually represents provision. And so David is summoning Mephibosheth. And as Mephibosheth, he would be terrified, because if the king is calling you, you're not expecting anything good. You're not expecting him to show you any favor. So it says, Ziba answered the king, "You'll find him in Lodabar at the house of Machir, son of Amiel." And then it says, Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, son of Saul, came to David, fell face down, and paid homage. Listen, that's how we should always reverence God. Face down. The posture of our heart should always be to worship God face down. Give him the awe, the wonder, the respect that his name deserves. And so that's what Mephibosheth did. And then it says, "I am your servant," he replied. David says, "Don't be afraid." And that reminds me of so many times that the Lord encounters people in the Bible, and the first thing he tells them is, don't be afraid. And then he says, "Since I intend to show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan, I will restore to all your grandfather Saul's fields, and you will always eat meals at my table." Are you kidding me? We are Mephibosheth. We are the ones that are lame. We are the ones that are broken. We are the ones that need restoration. And God initiated his love for us. He pursued us. David is a picture of God in our lives. And Mephibosheth is us. We are undeserving. We are broken. We are lost. We are distant from God, but yet God comes to us to show us his kindness. It is his kindness that leads us to repentance. And then he says, "You will always eat meals at my table." And I love something that my dad always says. He says, Mephibosheth being seated at the king's table, knowing that he was lame, the table covers his disability. The table covers his dysfunction. And that just blew my mind, because it is love that covers a multitude of sins. We are undeserving of God's love, of his favor, of his grace, yet he invites us to sit at his table. Do you know what's that, to sit at the king's table after you've been exiled, after you've been isolated, after you've been rejected, after you've been ostracized, God invites you to sit at his table, because God goes for the people that are rejected, the outcast, the marginalized. So if you find yourself in that place, you're in a good place, because that's where God goes. That's where he meets you, where you feel unworthy, where you feel like you have nothing to offer him. What a beautiful picture of what God has done for us in our lives. So I just want to share that with you today, because the King has invited you to sit at his table. Will you sit at his table?